A mother's dying whisper cuts through the howling sandstorm. Now, my baby is safe. In the scorched heart of 1876 Arizona, on the brutal expanse of Red Mesa, Clara Hayes cradles her infant against her blood-soaked chest, her final act defying a world of hatred and betrayal. Once a devoted Army nurse, widowed by a massacre she blamed on the Apache, Clara's life of isolation shatters when she finds a dying warrior at her door. One choice ignites a forbidden alliance, uncovers a shattering truth, and demands the ultimate sacrifice. What lullaby echoes through Red Mesa's canyons even today? Stay until the end. You won't believe who carries her legacy. If this hooks you, hit subscribe for more untold tales of courage. Comment below. Where are you listening from? The summer of 1876 baked Arizona's Red Mesa into cracked red earth, where heat devils danced off sun-bleached stones, and the wind carried the rust tang of old blood and distant campfires. Perched on a crumbling plateau amid jagged spires, an abandoned mail station clung to life, a sagging adobe husk with a tin roof rattling like dry bones. Smoke curled thin from its chimney, the only sign of defiance against the desolation. Inside, Clara Hayes moved like a shadow, her infant son bound tight to her chest in a faded calico sling. At 26, she was all sharp angles and quiet resolve. Sun-freckled skin stretched taut over high cheekbones, ash-blonde hair pinned back under a wide-brimmed hat, stained with mesquite sap. Her husband, Dr. Jonathan Hayes, an Army surgeon, had been cut down 2 years prior in a massacre that settlers pinned on Apache raiders. The town called it justice. Clara called it a grave that swallowed her world. Since then, she mended travelers for coin, bullet wounds, snake bites, heat stroke, but kept her rifle primed and her door barred to any red-skinned shadow. By day, she foraged, grinding yucca roots for poultices, boiling creosote bush for fever tea, her free hand cradling the baby's downy head as she hummed half-forgotten hymns. Her voice was thin, frayed at the edges, but it carried, a fragile thread against the canyon's endless howl. "Hush now, little Jonathan," she'd murmur, the name a talisman against loneliness. "Mama's here." Night fell hard that July evening, the sky bruising purple before the storm hit. Sand scoured the horizon first, a yellow wall devouring the sun, then thunder cracked like a cavalry charge. Clara shuttered the windows, banking the fire low, and rocked her son by the flickering lantern. The baby fussed, tiny fists balled against the gale, rattling the doorframe. Then, a sound pierced the roar. Not wind-whipped sagebrush or coyote yelp, but the wet thud of a horse collapsing, followed by a guttural groan, raw and human. Clara froze, pulse hammering. Raiders? Outlaws? She snatched the lantern, its iron handle biting her palm, and cracked the door. Sand blasted in, stinging her eyes, but she stepped out, skirt whipping like a flag of truce. 20 yards off, in the lantern's jittery glow, lay a man sprawled face down in the dust. Broad shoulders strained against a fringed buckskin vest, dark hair matted with grit and blood. A quiver of arrows jutted from his back, feathers limp in the gale. Blood pooled black beneath him, seeping from a ragged gash across his ribs. Knife work, deep and deliberate. Apache. The word hit her like buckshot. The baby stirred, wailing sharply into the storm. Clara's breath caught. Every settler's yarn screamed the same. Savages who scalped women, dashed infants on rocks. This one was enemy incarnate. Raider, murderer, ghost of her husband's killers. Turn away. Bar the door. Let the desert claim him. But her boots carried her forward, crunching red gravel. Kneeling, she tilted his head. His face was younger than expected, mid-20s maybe. High cheekbones caked in dust, full lips parted in shallow rasps. No war paint, just the raw stamp of survival. Old scars like lightning across his bronze forearm. Fever-hot skin under her probing fingers. He was minutes from gone. Jonathan's voice echoed unbidden. Everyone deserves one chance, Clara, even the enemy. Spoken over a dying Confederate in '64, his hand steady with sutures, while bullets whined outside the tent. She cursed under her breath, the storm's howl mocking her hesitation. With a grunt, she sliced his vest open using her belt knife, exposing the wound. A puckered slash, edges already curling black. Blood welled fresh as she pressed her shawl against it. He twitched, a low moan escaping. Taji. Apache gutturals she couldn't parse. Dead weight, 200 pounds of muscle and bone. Dragging him inside would break her. Yet she hooked her arms under his, heels digging furrows in the sand, and hauled. Inch by brutal inch, the baby was bouncing against her with every heave. Rain came suddenly, fat drops mixing mud to slurry, slicking her grip. Lightning forked overhead, illuminating his slack face, defiant even in oblivion. The door banged shut behind them. She dumped him on the packed dirt floor, lungs burning, and bolted it against the world. The baby screamed louder now, sensing chaos. Clara stripped the shawl, sodden with his blood, and boiled water over the embers, her hands moving on instinct. Willow bark tea, yarrow poultice from her kit. Stitching by lantern light, needle-piercing flesh, his body arching once with a hiss before slumping still. Hours blurred. Storm raged on. Clara sat vigil, rocking her son, rifle across her lap. Outside, wind screamed murder. Inside, 3 heartbeats fought the night. Mother, child, and the stranger whose life she'd stolen from death's jaws. What had she done? Dawn clawed through the storm's remnants, painting the mesa in bloody streaks. Clara's eyes burned from sleepless vigil, the stranger's chest rising in shallow rhythm under her rough stitches. Fever gripped him, skin like sun-baked clay, sweat beading his brow. She forced willow tea past cracked lips, then collapsed against the wall, rifle never leaving her side. Hooves thundered at mid-morning, shattering the fragile quiet. Clara bolted upright, heart slamming. Through the dust-caked window, 3 riders materialized, dust devils in Union blue, led by a broad man with a scarred jaw and eyes like hammered flint. Sergeant Holden, Jonathan's old comrade, now a scalp hunter chasing Apache bounties. She swept bloodied rags behind a crate, checked the stranger's pulse, steady, damn him, and cracked the door, baby fussing against her chest. "Holden," she called, voice level as canyon stone. "What brings federal boots this far from the fort?" He swung down, spurs jangling like death knells, his men fanning out with Winchesters loose. Holden's face split in a wolf's grin, but his gaze raked the station. Boot prints in the mud, a horse carcass half buried in sand 50 yards off. "Heard the storm hit hard, Clara. Thought a widow with a whelp might need checkin'. Apache sign everywhere. Tracks fresh as yesterday's kill." She shifted, blocking the threshold, one hand stroking the baby's back. "Managed fine, always do." His boot toed a dark smear on the stoop. Blood, rain-diluted but unmistakable. "Funny thing, one of Monga's dogs got jumped last night. Prospectors swear. Took a bowie deep in the ribs, horse gut shot. Bleedin' bad. Man's desperate now. Might crawl to any hole." He leaned in, breath sour with tobacco. "You shelter that red bastard, it's treason. Hangin' tree waits the same for squaw men and traitors. Bounty's 200 alive, double dead. See anything, force? You holler." Clara met his stare, chin lifted. "The only thing I see is dust, and trouble you dragged here. Ride on." Holden lingered, eyes narrowing at the shuttered window, then spat a brown arc into the dirt. "Keep sharp, Hayes. Savages don't forget a kindness." He mounted, reined hard, and they vanished into the shimmering heat, leaving hoof echoes like fading gunshots. She barred the door, knees buckling. The stranger stirred, dark eyes cracking open, fever-glazed but tracking her every move. No words, just a low rasp. Water. She poured from the bucket, steadying the tin cup to his lips. He drank deep, then rasped again, clearer. "Koa." Clara nodded once. "Clara." No more needed. Trust was a loaded chamber, pointed, not pulled. But he wasn't staying put. By noon, as she ground corn for mush, a scrape sounded from the rear. She spun, rifle up, empty floor. Vomit rose, blood trail snaked out the back door, fresh drops gleaming. "Damn you," she hissed, snatching lantern and satchel. The trail led down a ravine, bootless prints dragging through scree. 50 yards on, she found him, slumped against a boulder at the canyon lip, one arm clutching ribs, the other clawing at rock like a cornered cat. 100-foot drop yawned below, wind keening up from the abyss. His horse's corpse bloated nearby, arrow feathered. His own people? Deserters? Eyes locked hers, not pleading, but calculating. Escape or die, trying. Clara dropped to her knees, baby kicking against her ribs. "Fool! You'll rip the stitches." No time for debate. She looped rawhide from her pack under his arms, braced her heels in gravel, and pulled. Dead weight fought gravity. 200 pounds of sinew and hate, sliding inch by cursing inch. Sand cascaded into the void. Her shoulders screamed, boots carving trenches. The baby wailed, sensing the strain. Halfway up, he found purchase, pushing with his good leg, raw power surging. Together, they crested the rim, collapsing in a tangle of limbs and dust. Blood seeped anew through bandages, but he lived. Behind the station squatted a shallow cave, mouth veiled by mesquite. She dragged him there, a veil of thorns snagging her skirts. Inside, cool stone exhaled damp earth. She cleared a space, lined it with saddle sacks for bedding, and built a smokeless fire with dry scrub. Brewed more tea, repacked the wound with creosote leaves. Koa watched, silent as she worked, wary hawk sizing a trap. Night fell again, stars pricking the slot like arrowheads. Clara nursed the baby by fire glow, humming low. Koa's gaze softened fractionally on the child, then flicked to her scarred hands. Surgeon's wife, healer's legacy. He touched his chest, mouthed, "Thank." She nodded, rifle close. Outside, coyotes yipped challenges. Inside, the cave held 3 fragile lives, bound by blood and storm. Holden's threat hung like gunsmoke. Dawn would bring choices sharper than Bowie blades. Those choices sharpened at dusk on the 3rd day, when Koa's fever shattered like brittle quartz. He sat up against the cave wall, bandages taut but holding, dark eyes clear as polished obsidian, measuring her, the child, the rifle propped nearby. Clara knelt by the fire, stirring rabbit stew from a snare she'd set, the baby's soft gurgles filling the slot canyon's hush. He extended a calloused palm, fingers splayed. Peace. She hesitated, then clasped it, an iron grip, brief as a loaded truce. "Koa," he repeated, tapping his chest. She nodded, pointing to the infant. "Jonathan." His gaze lingered there, softening like heat off stone after rain. Words came halting, pieced from traitor tongues and battlefield scraps. He gestured to his wound, mimed an ambush, rifle barrels flashing, his horse rearing into arrows. "Paper," he grunted, fishing a blood-crusted hide from his breechclout, folded tight, sealed with wax stamped eagle and stars. Clara's spoon clattered into the pot. She unfolded it by firelight, heart kicking like a Mustang. Ink blurred but legible. Jonathan's precise script. To the Chiricahua bands, terms for truce, supplies for peace. Signed, Dr. Jonathan Hayes, U.S. Army Surgeon, Fort Verde. Dated 3 days before the massacre. Her world inverted. Not Apache arrows, but betrayal. Holden's signature lurked at the bottom. Witness. The man who'd toasted Jonathan at their wedding, now profiting from his grave. Rage coiled cold in her gut. Not at Koa, but the serpent in Union Blue who'd orphaned her boy for bounties and land grabs. She refolded the hide, tucking it into her bodice. Koa watched, understanding without translation. Enemy of my enemy. Days blurred into a fragile routine. Dawn brought lessons. Koa traced wind patterns on sand, swirling fingers foretelling rain clouds massing east. Storm come, he'd say, voice gravel low. Clara etched English on slate. Rain, safe, he repeated, precise as arrow fletching. She taught him the baby's needs, how to jiggle the sling for colic, mix goat milk with honey. His hands, scarred from bowstring and blade, cradled Jonathan with startling gentleness, one thick finger hooked for tiny fists to grip. The cave walls echoed their barter, gestures sharpening into a shared tongue. Nights deepened the bond. Clara ground mesquite pods by the ember glow, and Jonathan was nursing quietly. Koa whittled a cradleboard from driftwood, knife flashing rhythmically. One evening, as shadows pooled, she hummed an old Scotch lullaby, voice weaving through smoke. Hush ye, my dovey. Koa stilled, head tilting. Then, low and resonant, he joined. Apache cadence, syllables rolling like distant thunder over canyon rims. Gehi, Shima. The melody intertwined, her fragile thread braiding his ancient chant. Jonathan sighed content, eyes drifting shut. Clara's throat tightened. She'd heard that tune before. 74, Fort Bowie Stockade. A fevered prisoner, arrow-shattered leg, gasping it as she dosed laudanum. Mother's song, he'd whispered before dying. She'd buried him at dawn, unmarked. Now it lived in Koa's voice, binding their wounds. She met his eyes across the fire. Two survivors of the same war, flags be damned. He nodded once, profound as a blood oath. If you're gripped by these hidden truths of the frontier, like how one song can shatter decades of hate, hit subscribe now. You'll catch every twist in tales that history buried, but truth drew hunters. Fifth dawn, buzzards wheeled tighter over the mesa rim. Koa stiffened, scenting it before sound. Dust devil hooves, 6 strong. He doused the fire, smeared ash on their faces, and pressed the hide into her hand. Go. Holden. Clara peered through mesquite. Holden's squad, plus prospectors, rifles glinting, bayonets fixed. He dismounted at the station ruins, boot grinding a bloodied rag overlooked in haste. Tracks to the cave, he barked. Burn it out. Flames licked the thorns as they torched the entrance. Smoke billowed, acrid prayer to desert gods. Koa gripped his knife, jaw set for slaughter. Clara clutched Jonathan tighter. No running. Canyon boxed them like a grave trap. Yet in that choke of ash, Koa's eyes held hers. Not defeat, but fire. The peace letter burned in her pocket like lit powder. Holden's lie would end here, or take them all. Smoke clawed up the cave mouth like vengeful spirits, flames devouring mesquite thorns with hungry cracks. Holden's men whooped from the rim, shadows dancing grotesque in the blaze. Clara choked on ash, Jonathan's wails piercing the roar as Koa's knife hand trembled. Not fear, but fury at being caged. He slashed a gash in the rear wall's loose scree, revealing a narrow fissure snaking into darkness. Out, he growled, shoving the cradleboard into her arms. But the slot pinched tight. Baby too bulky. Clara shook her head, eyes flint hard. Together, or not. Koa's jaw worked, then he nodded, warrior's calculus shifting. He smeared soot across Jonathan's face, bound the child to Clara's chest with his breechclout straps, secure as a war bundle. Me first. Pull you. His frame wedged through, broad shoulders scraping stone, bloody. Clara followed, the letter scorching her ribs like a brand. They emerged into a gutted arroyo, knee-deep in talus, moonless night swallowing sound. Holden's torches bobbed closer, voices barking orders. "Fan the back! No rabbit holes!" Koa melted into shadow, pulling her upslope toward a juniper thicket. But a loose rock skittered. Betrayal and gravel. Rifle cracks split the dark. Lead whined past, splintering bark inches from Clara's head. She dove, shielding Jonathan, as Koa yanked her behind a boulder. 3 front, 2 flank, he hissed, counting muzzle flashes like enemy lodges. Bullets chewed the rim, ricochets whining hymns to hell. Pinned, breath ragged. Koa's wound wept fresh crimson, soaking his leggings. Clara's mind raced. Jonathan's satchel, forgotten in flight, held 1 ace. 3 sticks of dynamite from Prospector repairs, fuses coiled like rattlers. She crawled back through the fissure on her belly, fingers clawing stone, emerging with the bundle slick with sweat. Koa's eyes widened. White man's thunder. She knotted 2 sticks, trailed fuse through the cave's main chamber, then lit it with flint spark. "Run! 20 heartbeats to Inferno." They bolted upslope, legs pumping through scree storms. Behind, Holden's crew piled brush on dying flames, then cataclysm. The blast roared like God's own cannon, a cave mouth erupting in a fire gazer, shrapnel of stone and timber shredding night. Screams cut short. 2 men vaporized. Holden flung backward, arm mangled to bone. Dust settled to chaos. Survivors staggered. Holden cursing, 1 armed, 3 left scrambling mounts. Koa and Clara gained the mesa crest, lungs afire, but hooves thundered anew from below. Holden's reinforcements, 8 strong, cutting escape. Koa halted at the lip, knife drawn, facing the noose of riders. "I go. You hide. Let her. Show fort." His voice cracked granite, final as a death song. Clara gripped his arm, nails drawing blood. "That dies with you. Peace dies. Jonathan needs both worlds." Wind lashed her hair like war banners. Below, Holden's lantern swept the slope. They had minutes. She untied Jonathan, pressing the swaddled boy into Koa's arms, his face fractured, warrior to father in a breath. "Take him. North Ridge. Your people wait 2 days' ride. Letter proves truth." Koa's eyes searched hers. Then he unslung his mother's necklace. Turquoise beads, eagle claw pendant. He draped it over the infant's neck. Spirit guide. Safe. Clara stripped his spare cloak, fringed buckskin reeking of sage and blood, and donned it, hood shadowing her face. From her station's corral, a lame mule stamped uneasily. She mounted bareback, rifle slung, and wheeled into the gale rising east. Sandstorm brewing, yellow veil perfect shroud. Koa vanished into junipers, Jonathan's cries muffled against his chest. Clara spurred down the switchback, cloak billowing phantom-like, a specter in the brewing maelstrom. Dust devils whipped higher, visibility choking to arm's length. Holden's line shattered at her charge. Ghost Rider from the blast's fury. "There, the buck!" he bellowed, raising pistol one-handed. Flame spat. The bullet tore through her shoulder, bone splintering white-hot. Clara lurched, mule bucking wild, but clamped thighs held. Sand blinded, wind screamed benediction. She circled wide, drawing fire, volley after volley, chewing empty air. Minutes bought, Koa's trail cold. Strength ebbed, blood hot down her arm, vision tunneling black. The mule stumbled. She slid free, crashing into Talus. Jonathan's sling mercifully empty. Holden's riders closed, triumphant jeers fading as Clara lay still, cloak pooled crimson. The storm swallowed her form, a fallen warrior in enemy garb. Up the ridge, Koa paused once, hawk cry piercing gale, signal complete. Then shadows claimed him and the child. Her sacrifice is etched in wind-scoured stone. Shadows claimed Koa and the child, but the hawk cry lingered, a final thread in the storm's howl, carrying north through lightning-scarred canyons. 2 days' brutal ride. Koa's wound festered under rawhide poultice, Jonathan's cries muffled in buckskin cradle. Chiricahua scouts found them at dusk on the 3rd. Arrows knocked, then lowered at Koa's blood oath sign. They bore him to the rancheria hidden in Black Mesa's fist, a maze of wickiups veiled by piñon smoke, ponies grazing silent in defiles. The elders gathered under starfire, faces etched like canyon walls. Koa presented the letter, wax seal cracked open. Jonathan's words demanding truce, Holden's betrayal inked black. Murmurs rose like wind through cedars, proof the White Eye's peace was strangled at birth. The boy, pale as quartz in their bronze circle, clutched the turquoise claw. No blade touched him. Koa named him Jonathan Hayes, son of a healer, brother to us. Dawn broke with Chiricahua rites. Under a gnarled juniper straddling earth and sky, they dug Clara's grave, Koa marking the spot from her whispered coordinates. He carved an eagle from lightning-struck cottonwood, wings spread in eternal flight, and laid it with the necklace beads. No cross, no stone, just wind-polished pebbles in a circle, her Apache cloak folded at the head. 2 worlds saved, he rasped to the 4 winds, voice gravel over bone. Holden's riders scoured Red Mesa for days, finding only her body twisted in talus, cloak riddled with their lead. Buck's corpse, they lied in reports, bounties split in cantina whiskey. But whispers spread, a ghost mule vanishing into sand, no body claimed. Fort Verde's commander buried the letter deep. Scandal too raw for Washington desks. Holden rode higher, promoted on victory, his mangled arm a badge. 2 years carved the legend. Red Mesa's winds turned mournful, keening through slots like a woman's dirge. Apache riders paused at the juniper grave, leaving sage bundles and hawk feathers. Prospectors crossed themselves, muttering of the White Mother's song, that braided lullaby haunting storm fronts, drawing lost horses home. In the Chiricahua strongholds, Koa rose chief after Mangus's fall, shoulders scarred like a brand of fate. He never scalped, never raided blind, taught his warriors creosote for fever, yucca sutures for wounds. And always at his side, Jonathan Hayes, toddler turned boy, ash-blonde braids woven with eagle plumes, skin bronzed by Mesa sun. By 78, the child spoke fluid Apache and frontier English, herding ponies with a whistle sharp as arrows. Koa's lodge echoed lessons, mortar-pounding willow bark beside slate-scratched alphabet. Jonathan's first hunt yielded a jackrabbit, his first heel, a warrior's arrow-split foot. The band called him Gahe Jin, songbringer. Prospectors glimpsed him once, a white-faced lad on a paint pony, trailing Koa's war party, not with rifles, but satchels of bandages. Ghost child, they spat, but traded gold dust for his poultices when lead fever struck. One crimson dusk, at the old mail station's charred bones, Jonathan knelt where foundations crumbled. Winds rose suddenly, carrying the lullaby. Hush ye. Gahe Shima. Faint as memory. He tilted his head, eyes distant, then sang it full. Mother's thread. Koa's thunder, worlds entwined. A silver-haired traitor reined up, pipe clenched. Boy, that's Apache devil song. Where'd you learn? Jonathan stood, turquoise claw glinting at his throat. Mother's song. She said compassion outlives the gun. The traitor paled, wheeling away. Word flew. The Hayes whelp raised red. preaching peace from massacre grave. Years stacked like mesa layers. Jonathan grew tall, leading raids that spared women and young, forging truces with wary ranchers. Koa watched from council fires, pride carved deep as his scars. When bullets finally found the old chief in '82, Jonathan took the eagle feather crown, bridge between canyons of hate. Red Mesa's song never faded. Storms still birthed it from stone throats, a defiant echo. One woman's blood buying two people's tomorrow. Her grave blooms unlikely. Desert rose twisting from pebble ring, thorns guarding the quiet truth. Compassion's root runs deeper than lead veins, outlasting empires of dust. Clara Hayes's final whisper echoes across Red Mesa, a mother's defiance rewriting two worlds. Could one life truly bridge such hatred? Drop your thoughts in the comments. What sacrifice would you make for peace? Grateful you journeyed through this untamed tale with me. Share it if it stirred you. Until next time, when another forgotten voice rises from the dust, ride safe.